Church bells tolled across the UK this afternoon in honour of the monarch. This as crowds continue to gather at Buckingham Palace and other royal residences to pay their last respects to Queen Elizabeth II. UK correspondent Olly Barratt is joining us now for the latest updates. Good afternoon, Olly. Welcome to Today here on eNCA. The UK is in mourning, and as President Cyril Ramaphosa said in his message of condolences to the royal family and the people of Britain, she will be fondly remembered by many people across the world.
Prince Charles to King Charles III. Absolutely, and today is a big day in a series of big days. We've just seen King Charles III touch down at RAF Northolt, which is a military base actually very close to where we're speaking to you from now in Windsor. The castle is behind me, the military base not far in that direction, RAF Northolt, just outside London. And so Charles is now making his way into the British capital for a busy afternoon. On his agenda, his first audience with his Prime Minister, Liz Truss, since he became monarch. We're seeing MPs paying tribute in the House of Commons this afternoon as that takes place. And then this evening there will be a remembrance service for the Queen at St Paul's Cathedral in London. But we will also see what is a very, very significant moment indeed for Charles, which is his first address to the nation as monarch. That will take place at 6 p.m. UK time, we expect. And monarchs don't speak to their public very often, and so in one sense Charles doesn't have many chances to get this right. He needs to set the tone at the beginning of his reign, clearly wanting to take over from his mother and set the tone in terms of what comes next in the days ahead, but also the weeks and the months and the years ahead as well. And looking at the tributes that have been paid in the House of Commons to the Queen today, we've seen speeches from the current Prime Minister, former Prime Ministers as well, Boris Johnson included. He was interesting, Boris Johnson, because he was able to reference the meeting that he had with the Queen on Tuesday when he was resigning in front of her and effectively handing over to Liz Truss. And he said that on Tuesday she was radiant, she was knowledgeable, and she was fascinated as ever about British politics. So clearly, despite her declining health, as recently as Tuesday, she was able to have lively conversations with her incoming and her outgoing Prime Minister as well. And also Liz Truss, the new Prime Minister, she talked about the Queen, and one of the ways in which she paid tribute to her was by describing her as the nation's greatest diplomat. And then she went on to reference her visit to post-apartheid South Africa, and she said that that visit to South Africa by the Queen showed her unique ability to transcend difference and heal division. So, as I say, a busy day in terms of set-piece events, but also a day in which we're hearing more tributes coming domestically and internationally to the Queen.
And very briefly, Olly, while I have you, the sentiment around on the ground, we've seen people flocking to Buckingham Palace to pay their respects, for example. Public reaction to her death?
It's an interesting mood because it's somber at times, and actually you do see people with tears in their eyes. You see people crying, and here in Windsor people are making their way up towards the castle behind me. Many of them are clutching flowers. We've been in the town, and in many of the florists you really can't get your hands on many flowers because they're being bought up by people who want to take them to the perimeters of Windsor Castle and leave them there in tribute. But there's also a celebratory mood at times. We hear the national anthem being sung in places at Buckingham Palace in London, but also here at Windsor Castle, just outside London as well. And that national anthem is changing, of course, and sometimes people are singing it with God Save the Queen at the end, and sometimes people are changing it to the new current version, God Save the King, reflecting the fact that King Charles is now the new monarch. One of the other interesting elements to what is unfolding at the moment is sport, by the way, because the Premier League has cancelled its fixtures this weekend, but the government has now made it clear that it didn't insist on that at all, and that the Premier League has taken that decision on its own accord. The Premier League says it's the right thing to do. Some football fans agree with it, some football fans don't, and particularly when you place it against some decisions that are being taken by other sporting bodies. For example, we expect the cricket, South Africa-England, to resume on Saturday. Rugby fixtures are going ahead, and so there is a sense in which some organisations are taking different steps from others, and the Premier League is facing some scrutiny, let's say, about the decision to cancel or postpone fixtures this weekend. One of the reasons they're facing great scrutiny, the Premier League, is that next weekend is likely to be around the time of the Queen's funeral. That is going to mean a huge policing operation in the British capital. And that will have ramifications for football, because many police might be taken off what they would normally be doing on a Saturday or a Sunday, which is policing football matches. So if the Premier League has to postpone football 2 weekends in a row, that's disappointing, not just disappointing for many football fans, but it also means incomes are potentially curtailed for people who work at football every weekend, and who might not be therefore being paid over a period of a fortnight. Now, perhaps insignificant in the grand scheme of things, given the matters that we are discussing, but just something to keep an eye on, how that debate around sport and what exactly should take place and what shouldn't take place, and how that's developing.
Yes, thank you very much for bringing that up, Olly, because as you've said, South Africa is also involved in some sporting activities in England at the time. We'll have to wait and see what happens to the world of football. We know how big the English Premier League is here. Meanwhile, Britain is preparing to hear from King Charles III, and that will be this evening, and as it gets ready as well for the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II, that will be after next weekend. Now, her public appearances had become rarer recently because her health had declined in the last few months. She was seen smiling in her last official photographs taken on Tuesday when she appointed the new British Prime Minister Liz Truss. In Sweden, residents there are mourning Queen Elizabeth II, some saying that they are devastated.
I was kind of devastated because she's been around like my whole life, a big part of the world.
Oh, I am very sad, of course, and I have seen her personally, because when she was in Sweden, I was a young boy, and she passed just here, this street, under my balcony. And I was a small child looking down to her, and she passed, and she was very beautiful and young.
I feel sad because she was a very... people liked her very much. So it's sad for the English people.